Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. As I prepared to do this episode with AJ Rivera and Mike Schmidt, I couldn't help but to think about not only the fact that obviously Mike and I share the same last name, we have not met until this moment, and I'm willing to bet neither one of us are related to the Mike Schmidt everybody knows, but what I've really been thinking about is where I was in 2003 when Mike started up his business, his first business, as the founder of Anchorwave Internet Solutions. And it's funny to me because I hate to play the comparison game. We all go at our own pace in life. I wouldn't change anything, but I was more busy going to concerts and thinking about just trying to get through college and all that kind of stuff rather than being a baller and starting a business that has really grown and has thrived and is doing so well. And he brought his friend AJ into the mix. He helps him with Anchorwave. They are also the co-founders of AgencyCoach. They have a ton of wisdom and have gone through a lot over the years. And I can't wait to talk to them about their lives and their history and what they are doing. And much respect to both of you for starting out so early in life, I guess, and just staying with the changes and the times. And you're here on Mark My Words. How you doing today?
Doing great, Mark. Brother from, distant relative or something, right? We got to be related somewhere along the line.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah,
So,
thanks for having us, Mark. Looking forward to this. It's awesome.
yeah, it's been a long time coming. I know we had a few bumps in the road to get here, so I'm glad to have you guys. And even the time zone today almost got us. I wasn't looking at my phone, but
Yeah.
we are here, and not only are we here, but we got here somehow. And I want to talk because, let's see, I've been looking at both of you guys for like forever. So you both went to Arizona University. One of you studied psychology, one of you studied media. I believe it sounds like more along the lines of like maybe television, maybe more computer-based media you can explain. But interesting, I usually start out by asking the guests like how they wound up interested in the stuff that they majored in or did prior to what they're doing now. And whoever wants to start that conversation can, because I psychology to uh, what you're doing now, digital media, that's quite a change.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like back in 2003, the degree that was called media arts, that's what it was named. It sounds really fancy, right? Like, because I was fortunate in a position where my dad put me through college, and having a degree in media arts kind of sounds fancy, but what it really was a degree in watching movies and like writing papers about it. Which if I like, knew if I was my dad and I knew that's what that degree was, I don't think I would be as pleased about that idea. But fortunately, it actually did kind of arm me with what I was already kind of doing. I was already building websites in college. I was actually building websites in high school. And so, that degree kind of gave me a vantage point on media that I actually wouldn't probably use for at least another decade or a decade and a half. The stuff that we do today, we live in a world where there's a phone, there's a camera in all of our pockets, and using, social and YouTube and all these things to communicate. Like, I actually probably use my degree now today more than ever. Whereas, I was first getting started, like they were like literally two different worlds.
Yeah, I went to school for the same kind of thing, except I don't remember watching a whole lot of movies. Like they actually made us like do the production work. So I don't know. It sounds kind of cool to me. I've actually thought about going back for a doctorate because apparently if I did that, I would probably do more of that than I did. I only thing I remember is I had a teacher who was very snitty about the lighting on Three's Company and was always going off about how bad the lighting was. And that was about as much viewing of anything as I can remember doing. But I can relate to what you're saying that while I'm not using digital media certainly in the way that you guys have done and have been involved with it, certainly that background has helped me a lot with creating this show and the ideas that I come up with and just the freedom to be creative, and just the fact that I give myself the license to be creative because when you're working in the
Hmm.
real world, they don't always give you like not that you're not working in the real world, you obviously are, but in the regular corporate world, they don't always give you like as much of a license to be creative. So
Right.
you don't always think about the possibilities. Whereas I think if you're doing a more creative field, you can at least
Hmm.
be like, hey, wait a minute, I can be creative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I know AJ, I want to hear a little bit about how like, what were you thinking you were going to do with like a psychology degree other than like being a psychologist of some sort? Was that something you wanted to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd always been kind of fascinated by the human mind and how it works. And it's something that interests me. And I would read books about it. So I went to college. Like a lot of people always have an easy time opening up to me. And like I've always had that case where people tell me like their deepest, darkest secrets, even if it's like a stranger that I just met. And a lot of people are like, you should be a psychiatrist or psychologist or something. And when I went to college, I was like, not quite sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I was interested in that. And so that's why I ended up picking that. I didn't finish. Mike did end up getting his degree. I was about 3 years in. That's when my wife got pregnant and I kind of was forced to go get a job and started climbing the corporate ladder at Intuit, managing the online communities for QuickBooks and TurboTax and Quicken and those sorts of things. And never really went back to pursue that, and then ended up hooking up with Mike, and it's been amazing ever since.
As I've gotten older and I've heard more people tell me that I'm a good listener, that thought of why didn't I decide to follow a similar path as you did has occurred
Mhm.
to me. But
Yeah.
I think I'm a good listener and I think I do good within this universe. I don't know if I would actually be like a good psychologist though. I don't know if I would have enough of the right kind of patience for it. Like you
Yeah.
gotta almost have all of that. So I
Yeah,
don't
I'm not
know.
sure if I ended up enjoying that either. I enjoyed learning about it, but I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed being a psychologist or psychiatrist for my career.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you both wound up in a good spot, and I'd be curious to know because you both went to the same college. How did this relationship begin? How did it blossom into what it is now?
Yeah, so 2003 is when I started the business, and by so AJ and I met in 2008, and we met because I actually put out a job ad for what I called a web strategist. And to give you a little backstory of how that came to be, I was looking for somebody to sell for me. At that point in 2008, I had successfully handed off pieces of the business, namely like the production of what we were doing. But sales was something that I was still chiefly responsible for, and I was looking for some help. And prior to meeting AJ, I had kind of two attempts at that. I had this first guy, Chris, who came in, and after about 10 months of working for me, he came into my office one day. He's like, Mike, I think you should fire me. I was like, well, why? Like, what's going on, man? Is everything all right? He's like, well, I haven't sold anything yet. I was like, but you're almost there. You're gonna get it. And like I had a lot of belief in him, but like I didn't necessarily give him the training and the skills to do anything to be successful. So he left, hired another guy. More or less the same thing happened. And by the time I had done that twice, I was pretty frustrated. I was like, what am I doing wrong? And I just kind of gave up. I mean, like, you know what? I'm just going to handle sales. But here's what I could really use some help with. I could really use some help with somebody coming in. If they could just call my existing clients and say, hey, I just were thinking about you and seeing if you need anything. And I was looking at your website because we were doing mostly websites back then. So looking at your website and I thought maybe there's these things could change or adjust. And so I said, okay, I'm going to hire someone that can just do that and call, and I'm going to call a website strategist. And so, AJ was, caught by that title because, he was, considered himself, he knows strategy, right? And we joke that I kind of tricked him into a sales role, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like if it would have said website sales or digital marketing sales, like there's zero chance that I would have applied for that. At that time, I'd been at Intuit for nearly 10 years, climbed the corporate ladder, but was feeling like a really small cog in this huge machine and not really kind of understanding how the work that I was doing was really doing much, right? And so I was looking for an opportunity where I could work more closely with the people that we were impacting. And when I saw that job title, I was like, yeah, web strategy, I can do that, right? I'd been managing the online communities for QuickBooks and TurboTax and so forth, and applied a lot of web strategy to grow those communities. And so it just fit. And it turns out Mike was right, though, because at the end of the day, sales is strategy, right? And we have people that are coming to us and they have goals and they have needs. And it's my job to kind of understand what their goals are and then provide them with a strategy of how they're going to get there. And that's a consultative sales approach that we've adopted. It's worked really well for us. So it doesn't feel like sales, right? It doesn't feel like sales in the traditional way that I thought about it prior to having this role, where I was going to have to like force people to buy things or trick them into buying things or being like that sleazy type of salesperson that needed to like persuade them into taking actions they didn't want to take. It's not that at all. It's really just helping people to understand how you can help them and presenting that as an option.
It sounds to me that's where your psychology background and just that personality that you have really came in handy because, as you pointed out, when you're going out to a store or something like that, there's a certain like shtick that you gotta do to be a
Mm-hmm,
salesman, and that
mm-hmm,
appears to be a pretty effective way for a lot of
mm-hmm.
people to sell, which is probably why I was such a terrible salesman because I used to sell quote unquote sell furniture a long way back, right around the time that Mike here was getting into the entrepreneurial world, actually. And I couldn't sell a piece of furniture to save my life. I always ranked last in our store and probably company wide. And I think sometimes some of us are just too genuine for a role like that. But I think in this case, I think it actually benefits you guys so much more to be a little more straight because you're not just selling furniture or a car. Not that a car is not important, but you're
Hmm.
dealing with people's livelihoods and they're trying to start up a business or they're trying to get themselves going. And that's very important. I know that's something I take very personally and
Mm-hmm.
have treated this show in that way. When something goes well, I feel it and I'm really gutted. When it goes great, I'm on cloud nine. So it's very important to handle everybody's livelihoods with care.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. And nodding, if you're not watching, you can just feel the heads nodding here as the agreement.
Yeah,
So
100%.
So talk a little bit about like the ups and downs because you guys have been through a couple of eras now, I guess. And I know that it wasn't just all you know, really easy. You know, there had to have been some ups and downs. Talk a little bit about some of that and the adjustments you've had to make to technology, changes in the world.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think if
think
you go ahead, AJ.
I was gonna say, I think like there's definitely been a lot of learnings. I think there's been some times during this journey where maybe there were some things that were going on in the world that from the outside looking in would have looked like um, a disaster, right? There was a 2008 kind of downturn. There was the 2020 pandemic, and it's funny because during those times, it was some of our best times of running an agency. That's the time where a lot of people accepted that like nothing was going on. And I think one of the Mike and I's strengths is that we're abundance-based thinkers, and we realized that during that time, there's a lot of business owners that are worried about their business being impacted by it. And there's certain business owners that are going to kind of just do nothing and bleed out, right? And there's other ones that are going to reach out for help and make sure that they're doing everything they can to get their businesses going. So those two times, like things went really well. I'll tell you that like me and Mike hitting our first $1 million in sales in a year with our agency, we did it the hardest way possible. We were selling one time high ticket projects. We didn't have a whole lot of recurring revenue. We were constantly in these stages of what we call feast and famine, right? Periods of time where money just seemed like it's flowing in from everywhere, followed by periods of time where we're like, gosh, when's the next job going to come through, right? When's the next project going to happen? And we kind of got burnt out on that. We got really, really good at doing what we call Hail Mary campaigns, when we're looking at payroll coming up the next week and we know there's not enough money and how are we going to scramble to get money, we'd always figure it out. But I'll tell you what, it was super, super stressful living in that day in and day out. And there was a time where we actually sold our largest project ever. It was a six-figure website for a local casino, and Mike and I were on top of the world. We thought all of our money problems were solved. We were never going to have to worry about it again, and we're high-fiving. 3 or 4 months later, we completed the project, and we're proud of the work that we did. But then we start looking at the account, and the money's gone again, right? Like we'd spent it on resources and help building the website and all these other things, and we just felt super defeated, right? Like, gosh, we just got a whole bunch more money than we've ever had, and now it's gone again. And where did it go? So we reached out to our accountant and said, help us figure out like why that didn't have the impact that we thought it should. And she ran a report that really changed our lives forever. And it was a report of our top 20 clients for the past 5 years. And I was wholeheartedly expecting Casino del Sol to be number one on the list, right? But when in fact it was like number 19. And I'm like, what the heck? That's weird, right? So I go look at the top, and guess who's up there? It's an orthodontist that had been paying us $2,000 a month for the last 5 years, followed by an HVAC company that had been paying us $1,800 for the past 5 years. And all these people that we didn't sell high ticket projects to, but we sold monthly contracts that were lower but paid forever, right? And those were just kind of happening like as a result of us working with people. We build their website and they're like, cool, can you help us get more traffic to it? And we'd sell them these SEO and pay-per-click and all these other things, but it certainly wasn't a focus for us. We were out there hunting the big whales, trying to find the next casino. And so I guess what was reassuring about it was hard to find another casino, right? It's not like there's all these sitting around town, but there's orthodontists everywhere. There's HVAC companies there. There's home service businesses everywhere. So it was in that moment that we realized a huge, huge learning for us is that we needed to focus on recurring revenue and selling the services that were going to allow us to get paid over time. And we set out to do that. And within 14 months, we had built over six figures in recurring revenue and got it to a point where at the beginning of every month, first day of the month, all of our expenses were paid, all of our payroll was paid, and we could put money in our pockets, right? And that's when life changed for us because Now the sleepless nights were gone, the Hail Mary campaigns were gone. We could focus on working on the business. We could make investments in the business. We could hire help. We could do all these things that were really tough to do when we were just constantly worried about having to make that next sale and then starting the next month at zero again and doing that cycle over and over and over again.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to the theme of that, which is I know for me, I'll get a certain guest or a certain type of guest that I'm like, oh man, this is big time for me. Like, I feel like having you guys on this show, pretty big deal for me. So there, I appreciate everybody that I've had on because I've gained so much. And a big part of why I like doing this is that I can meet all kinds of people, whether you still are working on your business in like your grandma's basement or whatever, and you're just still trying to grow, or if you're more of a baller and you've got a lot of revenue coming in. So I can really relate to kind of like, those moments where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have so and so on my show. But it's also important to service everybody, because anybody who's looking for you to help them is a service that's worth doing, I think. And for me, that's why I'm always not only I'm very curious anyway. I think I wanted to do every single job that's ever been created. So I think that's one of the reasons I love doing this so much. But you can get value from everybody. And I'm sure those clients are certainly getting a lot from you in return.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
100%.
think what the story that AJ is highlighting here is really about finding the lessons and the challenging parts that have happened, right? And so yeah, as we've looked across time, like you just said, like you like doing lots of different jobs. Well, I think that's kind of the true thing for us is like we're open to doing lots of different things, but like if we run into a challenge, we want to figure out what the lesson is. And for us, it was really about identifying that business the business that we created wasn't working the way it wasn't working, right? And the thing that's really powerful about being an entrepreneur and owning a business is that you get to choose how it works, right? And you just have to listen to the times you get punched in the gut in order to change it up.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. There's been for as many awesome episodes that I've done that I've posted, there's a couple I haven't posted, and there's a reason that that happened because I felt that gut punch and just your instinct isn't always going to be right on. As much as I like to think I have a good intuition, it's
Mhm.
not always going to be good. And it's about being resilient, which you guys clearly have been, and resourceful and finding it within yourself. And luckily for both of you, you have each other, which I'd be curious to know because most people I've talked to on this show, they're while they might have a staff behind them, they're basically, it's like it's their business. But you guys are in it together, and that kind of thing is a little rare. Maybe I haven't met enough Mike and AJ's, but it's not that common. So I'd be curious to know how you guys make all of this work and still like each other and are friends and are having success.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It is kind of, I don't think I probably took for granted initially of like how much chemistry that AJ and I have had. But like, going back to that story when we met. So he came in, started calling a bunch of our clients, and was not a salesperson, but I kind of, like we said, tricked him into that. And, I saw pretty quickly that he kind of treated the business like his own, right? Like he wasn't an owner, but he was treating that way. And um, you know, a lot of people ask us because they see our partnership, they're like, "Well, should I go get a partner?" And what's funny is like most of the times I think our answer is no, don't go get a partner, which is confusing to people because like, well, why do you guys do that? And the reason I say that is that in most cases, when you're looking for a partner, or when I hear people looking for a partner, they're looking to fill a gap of something that they're missing. And I think that's a good reason to go get a partner, but I think that shouldn't be your first stop. I think the first thing you should do is go hire someone to fill that gap, right? Because, it's kind of like, you should date before you marry. Of course, there's those stories where like somebody goes on a blind date and they get married right away and like they're successful, but I'm willing to bet there's probably more unsuccessful case studies of that happening. So it's like, if you're going to find a partner, go hire someone to come work for you. And that's what happened. Like AJ and I got to the experience to like working together to the point where I'm like, oh, yeah, all right, this guy's kind of indispensable to the situation I've got going on. And I want to keep him around. And I think that's a much more healthy way to jump into it than it is other ways. And that's also why I think you find partnerships are so, successful partnerships can be rare because, they kind of rushed into it, whereas we didn't, and I mean, maybe that's just the kind of guy I am because like my wife and I dated for 9 years before we got married. We lived together before we got married. And like, then, you know, then one day we decided it was time. Right. So I think part of it for us is like, and just so people know, like, we have a full team behind us in our different businesses. But like the way that we communicate, I think is kind of evolved over time, and we've figured out how to do that.
I totally agree with you. I think you have to give any relationship a little bit of time to just reach that point where the light bulb goes off and you say, you know what, I think they'd be a good fit. I think they're right for the role. And don't necessarily want to put roles, into like love. But that was certainly for the most part, except for one thing in my life that I won't turn this into a dating show here, but other than that, there's a long story with that. But I am
Well,
like
AJ is a psychologist, so you could if you want to go in, if you need some if you want to lay down on the couch and have him you know assess you, we can go there if you want.
no, I think I've pretty much figured out why all of that happened. Like I basically married somebody after knowing them for like about a year. It wasn't even a full year. And I have no regrets, but I probably should have taken a different approach there. And there's a reason I did it. And yeah, it's too long of a story. But the next time around, I was like, I'm going to do this the way my gut tells me to do it. So listen to your gut and your intuition, which is clearly what Mike and AJ are doing. So I am all for that. Like there's a reason that I don't have like a co-host for this show. And
Hmm.
for one thing, I'm like I at least advertise myself as being a good listener. So I almost would be afraid of just being the other guy and just listening and just being the guy who's like laughing or saying, oh, yeah, that's right, and not really adding anything. Whereas if I'm in control, which I think I do better as a leader anyway, and I think that's something that all three of us have in common is I know from hearing your story about how AJ wound up becoming your business partner. It just sounded like he has good leadership skills, which I think listening is very important as a leadership skill. And either you have those skills or you don't. I think they can be learned, but I think a lot of it is either you have it or you don't. And I think you guys clearly do.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so leading into the next phase of your career together. So you figured out that AJ was a good fit for this next step. And how is that juggling two businesses together? Because it's not just one business here, one business there. You're both juggling them together. How how is it to manage that and to just delegate? How do you guys make all that work?
Imperfect action. We're fortunate that at least in one of our businesses, we've got an amazing leadership team, uh, and they have really stepped up and they run one of our businesses. Where AJ and I have kind of brought both of our focus into our coaching business, and we say all the time how we feel like we're learning all the lessons over again, you know, and it's it's we're willing to fail, I think, is probably part of it. We're willing to like take action even though we don't know the whole story, which would be that imperfect action. And we we're we're willing to feel uncomfortable and try new things. And I think that that's been a good recipe uh for us.
Well, as coaches, what's like the most recurring challenge that your clients bring to you, and how do you help them to up their game, much like you guys upped yours?
Say
Yeah.
that again. Oh, sorry, it was cutting out for me.
No,
Uh,
that's okay. So I'll do the best Mark impersonation as I can. And basically, like, what are some of the like most common issues that your clients bring when they're looking to you to coach them and to help them to up their game and their business?
Yeah, I'd say that leads is probably the number one reason. Like new clients is why a lot of people come to us, and so that's really just the symptom of a bigger problem, which is how do they create a business that consistently puts money in their account every month, and it's more than the expenses that they have, right? And that's kind of the problem that the story AJ shared earlier about the recurring revenue is really what we had to solve for ourselves. Is that it wasn't until we built enough stable recurring revenue where clients were paying us month after month that we kind of got out of this like panic mode of building a business, right? I think there's a lot of businesses that never grow to their full potential, or even they fail because they haven't figured out a system for attracting clients and selling those clients, keeping those clients, and like kind of Lego pieces might build up a block, a brick wall over time. The same idea happens with these recurring contracts that suddenly you've got enough revenue to cover your expenses. It's kind of like, have you ever looked at your bank account and the you added up what the statement said you spent that month? You're like, there's no way I spent that much money. There's $1 here and $100 there and $50 there, and on and on. You're like, there's no way it adds up to that. But sure enough, like you add it up as if the bank was wrong, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I did spend that much money. It sucks. It sucks when it comes to expenses, but like on the other side of things, when you're the person who's billing other people for services, like it doesn't take a lot of clients or a lot of contracts to make a meaningful impact in your monthly revenue. Be like, dang, like I'm making more now per month than I was at the job I used to have. Like, and that's what we help people with, building that.
And you talk a little bit about problem solving, and just, I guess that's a big part of what you do is you solve problems. And what do you think is important, like the most important skill to have as like that problem solver? They come with their issue. What do you feel is like your go-to, I guess, tool to help solve problems for people?
Yeah, I think one thing that we talk about a lot is the idea that life is an open book test, right? Like, if you remember when you were in school, teacher came in and said, "Hey, we're gonna have a quiz today, pop quiz," and you're like, "Oh," and then they're like, "Oh, but it's open book," and you're like, "Yes," right? And so, like, what I think as we grow into adults, we fail to recognize, especially as we get into entrepreneurship. I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they have to figure it out all on their own, otherwise it doesn't count, or they're not smart, or any of those types of things that play into it, when pretty much every issue that you're going to face in business, has already been faced by somebody else. And there's resources that you can look up. There's books that you could read. There's coaches you could hire. There's people around that can help you get past that, right? And give you that shortcut. And so that's really what our goal is like, Mike and I, we'd like to think that we pretty much saw it all, right, during our time in the agency and in the trenches. And, we're really just trying to be there for those people so that they don't have to make the same mistakes that we did or sit in them as long as we did either, just because they didn't go out there and get the help from somebody that's been there and figured it out and can easily just give them that solution so that they don't stagnate or plateau in that moment.
And that's a really good point, because entrepreneurship can be a very lonely game, and it can be very isolating. And I know for me, I'm one of those people who's very resourceful. I've lived a life of like, if I need an answer to a question, I'm probably going to either get it on my own or host a podcast in order to learn from experts like AJ and Mike who have wisdom that I don't. And that's really, for me, is like how I approach it. And that's not always like a good thing, because when you have support, it, just, I know from just doing this, it does a lot for my mental health. And mental health, as somebody who's trying to build themselves up, is hugely important. And I know a lot of people get sucked into working long hours and burning out. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that that's something, as partners, it probably not. I guess I'll let you guys speak to that, but I'm sure that eases the burden of burnout and some of the pitfalls that you can fall into. And do you can answer that, and also maybe tell us how you guys might help people who are in that place where they're burning out or dealing with anxiety with running their business.
Yeah, I think where burnout comes from is a lack of a definite or clear goal, right? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are we actually trying to create? Whether that be like how much money or how many clients, or, or it could be like, the kind of business that you want, like, how do you want it to run? And a lack of a clear plan on how to get there. And I think people don't set goals because they're not sure what's possible, or they're afraid of setting the wrong goal. And then I think people don't know how to get there because they're maybe not putting themselves in places where they have a good example of someone that's done it. I mean, I think, some people are motivated by really crazy big goals and they can set those things and that's what drives them. Other people are motivated by goals they see other people achieving, right? Here's this other guy who's just like me, who knows who's doing what I want to do, and they've got this many clients and this many things. Like, I think I could go do that, right? And I think um, it comes down to putting yourselves in proximity to the information that you need in order to get there, or the people that have done that thing. And that's why our coaching practice exists, because people look at our business, like, when we share with them, here's what we did, and here's how we did it. And if you want to copy this, I'm going to give you those tools, right? Or it might just be a book somebody needs, right? That gives them a roadmap or a plan to follow. But I think I think the recipe for extracting yourself from burnout has a lot to do with being really clear about what you want, and then also being confident in a plan that's going to get you there.
I think that is terrific advice. And I think you touched on the whole reason. I feel like a broken record because I always say this is the reason, that's the reason. I have a lot of reasons for why I decided to do this show. Let's be honest. And I feel like I always try to pinpoint this or that in every episode, because I guess everybody brings up a point that makes me think of why I did it. But one, I know for sure, one of the main reasons I decided to do this, and maybe why I start most episodes asking about everybody's past, is I want to get people out there thinking about if they're feeling stuck or unfulfilled. I want them to click play on an episode and hear somebody's path and say, hey, maybe while I'm not going to have $1 million in revenue tomorrow, that whatever they're doing, it inspires me. And I want to start doing the same kind of XYZ business. And that for me is like the whole
Mm-hmm.
purpose. And it's one of the many, many points I apparently seem to bring up as to why I'm doing this. And the guests that I bring on, they inspire me tremendously. I always say that I have the approach that I'm the most stupid person in the room, and the other people are the experts, and I love playing that role. But I also want, through me playing that role, I want people to learn from people like you guys and say, hey, maybe I need to think about how I'm doing this business differently. Oh, okay, I don't have to be a baller and have $1 million in my bank account at the end of the month. I can just take baby steps and build myself up. And hopefully through that, I'm easing some anxiety too, because it's real easy to play the comparison game and be like,
Mhm.
well, why aren't I like Mike and AJ? Why aren't I making blah blah blah? You should really try to focus on you and what steps you need to take and how you can get to the next plateau. And that's one of the things I love about what I feel you guys are trying to do. And I hope that people take heed of that advice.
Yeah, I think that something that's really helpful, like it's really easy when you're comparing to someone else to be like, why don't I have what they have? What are they doing? Right? What are the things they're doing? And like really just focusing in on that. I think something that might be a better starting point is asking the question instead of what are they doing? It's what are they believing? Like what do they believe, right? Like I had a personal trainer once, and I've gone in and out of trying to, yeah, health is a category for me that I've just like ping ponged on for sure throughout my life. Haven't figured that one out all the way, but I was working with a personal trainer, and of course he gave me the doing, right? He gave me a lot of like, here's the weight to lift, the thing to do, the thing to eat or not eat. But like I also started to think about like what does he believe, right? Like when he wakes up, like what does he believe is possible? What does he believe about food? What does he believe about consistency? What does he believe about, that the belief that he has when he's like lifting a weight that's super heavy that like he wants to put down, but he doesn't and keeps does another 4 or 5 reps at that point. Like what is the belief that's like entering his mind in that moment? And I think I'm always curious about that. And I think that if you or your listeners are thinking about, or if you're on social media later on today and you're scrolling and you get that weird thing in pit in the field, the pit of your stomach, where you're like comparing yourself to the person you're seeing and wondering why you don't have that thing, like maybe that would be a good trigger to be like, what did that person believe to get to the point where they're at, and where am I not believing those same things?
Well, I know you didn't ask me that question, but boy, that's a question I think I've been trying to answer my entire life, because as somebody who was born with the obstacles that I have, born with cleft palate and lip, also born with a very rare syndrome with it. I've had a lot of people who have doubted me. Probably some people from as far back as kindergarten and first grade would probably be shocked that I'm doing a podcast and I'm over 100 episodes in, and probably would never have believed that. And I myself, sometimes I'm like, boy, why the heck do I believe in myself as much as I do? Because I have every reason to just be like, I'm just gonna do 9 to 5 job, which I do anyway, I guess. But I mean, I am working for a company that even I'm just like, how did I even get here? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like I guess I've just always believed in myself, and I don't even know why that is, but I just
Mm,
I guess I feel like I have a message to send to everybody to hopefully
yeah.
not to, say I told you so, but just hopefully,
Sometimes that's it, right? Like,
you
nothing
know,
wrong with that.
well, I am so glad you're giving me the license to feel that way because I honestly, to be completely honest, yeah, I do have plenty of that. But there's also a side of me that wants to help people and inspire people. And I feel like I have a story that's worth telling and worth getting out there. And I feel like just by doing this, because there's a lot of people who have told me over the years, no, I can't see myself doing like a podcast or content because I sound weird or I don't have the right look. Well, guess what? I don't really have either of those things, but I'm
Hmm.
here anyway, and I'm doing it because I wish I could answer exactly why. But I do think you have to believe in yourself, I guess. I think that's a big part of it. And
Yeah.
crazy enough, I believe in myself.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great example. What's cool, you have some things that other people don't have, and maybe as a kid or you bought into the story of other people's description of you and what that meant to the world, right? And the shame would be buying that. Like that's really all this stuff that's wrong with us is other people, sometimes ourselves, but a lot of times other people telling us a story and us buying it and believing it's true. And it's like you're living an example of framing a different story around the situation that you've grown up with. And like, the louder and the more direct you get about that, like people love to see the underdog win, right? Right. Maybe the
Mhm.
underdog got beat up in elementary school, but the underdog, if they're a big kid and they're winning, like people love that story. And I think the mistake a lot of people have is not bringing that story. Like I don't know how much you bring that story you just shared into the stuff you're doing right now, but like it could be a massive it gives people context as to why they should trust and listen to you. And if you don't tell that story, then then you're just like everybody else, right? Which you're not.
I've been telling it a lot more as I've gone along, and I've had to teach myself to not necessarily always have the mindset of I'm just like everybody else and I'm just gonna try to fit in because the truth is I'm probably not like everybody else and I think I need to like embrace that. And I don't think I've ever really like not embraced it, but I think with this show, as time is going on and the more I talk about it, the more I'm like embracing it
Hmm.
and trying to, I guess, find the commonalities in the other person's story with my story, even though it's not really the same kind of thing. So, um, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think with that thought, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to tell everybody how they can find you, how they can work with you, and anything else you want to add.
Awesome. Well, Mark, it's been really fun here today. Folks who are interested in following up with AJ and I, if you head over to agencycoach.com/Marc, MARC, we'll put some resources there for you to jump in on. If you happen to own a business that is a web or digital marketing agency, we'd love to see if there's a fit for us to help you. And if you're looking to grow your business in other ways and you're not in that space, please reach out to us too. We'd love to be a resource for you and connect you in any way that we can.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you guys got a ton of stuff going on and things are looking really great for you guys. I love what you're doing and I really wish you all nothing but continued success and continued growth. And I love just the the realism and the authenticity that you bring to your work and nobody respects that more than me or anybody else that says that exact line. So, but I want to thank AJ Rivera and Mike Schmidt, who is not the 548 home run hitting Mike Schmidt, but he did hit a
I'll
few
sign.
out.
I'll sign a baseball. I'll be happy to sign a baseball for you. So.
I would love that.
Yeah.
But I thank you guys for being here on Mark My Words today. Again, they are both of Anchor Wave Internet Solutions and AgencyCoach. I thank you both for being here. And that's Mark My Words for today. See you soon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the Crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.